Hey, let's play some games. In fact, let's go through the Arcade Speed Drills file. This file has 7 worksheets in it, each designed to help you work on a specific part of your keyboard shortcut techniques. Some of these have a stopwatch on them, where we have a macro controlled, to turn the timer on, we do Control-Shift-S. And if I do Control-Shift-S, it populates the current time in B2. I work through the exercise. I come back and do Control-Shift-F to finish, and it populates the current time in B3. Calculates the difference, so it took me 8 seconds and 8/100ths of a second to get through my little dialogue there. Let's see how long it takes me to get through this file. I'll do Control-Shift-S to start. And what we're trying to learn here is practice moving our cursor around with Control plus arrow. There's a video game from the 1980s called Frogger, and Frogger had to start in a certain place, jump across the river on logs or other items they could find, like maybe some rocks, and then get to the finish line on the other side of the river. In that video game, if you fell in the water by making a wrong move, you would die. But in this one, you're just kind of on the honor system to practice your keyboarding shortcuts quickly. So what we're trying to practice here is the fact that Control and right arrow moves us either to the last populated cell or the next populated cell if we're going over some blank cells. So Control down will take me to the next populated cell, and then Control right, or just the right arrow, will take me to the end of this log. Control down, right, up, right, down, right, and so on. And we can work our way through the system. Sometimes we can't get from log J to log K, so we have to jump on a rock and another rock to get to K. And while this looks silly, it will, I hope it will help your intuition about using Control and the arrows to get around. Control-Shift-F says it took me 1 minute and 20 seconds. I'll bet you can do it more quickly. Now let's look at the second part of the learning objective on this sheet. It's to practice copying and pasting the logs from the river to the yellow cells. Now if I zoom out a little bit, I've got some yellow cells down here. They don't have anything in them. So if I start on A and do a Control down, I'm going to zoom right by that yellow cell and go another 1,048,000 rows before I hit anything. So that's not how I want to get there. Let me Control up again a few times and see the whole screen. What I'm going to want to do is jump over to this B cell, B column, and then go down. So yeah, as I was writing this game, I kind of lost interest in the water and the constraints thereof. But if you'll just start here, go right, down, right, that's the quickest way to get there without using your mouse. And so let's see what we can do here without using our mouse. Let me go ahead and warn you ahead of time. There are going to be a couple of places where we can't go straight down. The very first time, we need to think about going over and down and over. And then when we get over here to J, notice there's a blank spot here. After we paste that J log right here, then we won't be pasting anything here. We need to paste that K log right here. So we need to kind of jump over somehow. Again, don't worry about falling in the water. Just worry about getting these down here quickly. And understand that this is good practice for when we start rearranging pro forma models and we get the financial statements, but they're not really in the way we want them. These techniques, this intuition that we're building on this game will pay off in that pro forma modeling. So I'm going to hit Start. I'm going to do Control-Shift-S. Come down, copy that log. I'm just going to go over, down, over, and paste. And I can go copy, paste, and so on. It looks like it took me just over 1 minute, and I know you can do it more quickly than that. But here again, we are just building muscle memory, learning how that Control and Shift and the arrow keys work together using Control-C and Control-V to copy and paste. Now let's move to the next sheet. This one's called Bomb Drop, and the idea here is we're still going to get around using our control arrows. Our learning objective is that if we can select a range of cells, so in this case I'm going to go from the little circle starting point, I'm going to Control down, and then I'm going to do a Control-Shift down and select a range of cells. If we can get that range of cells selected, whether it's rows or columns or both, and if we'll hit Control-D to copy the top cell all the way down. Look what happens, Control D. So if we had a formula we wanted to copy, it would copy it all the way down. If we do it correctly, then my little missile turns into an explosion. Wouldn't believe how much time I spent drawing the explosion there and getting that to turn red. So what we can do is then we can move around here, Control D, Control D. And notice here, well, I'm running into this problem. If I'm just holding my Control key down, and you need to remember here not to do so, Control D. Look what happens here. If I get all of those at one time, Control D, I can do them all at once. So obviously what I want you to learn out of this is that you can get around a pro forma statement pretty quickly and copy formulas down, or as we'll see on the next page, copy formulas to the right. And once this becomes muscle memory, you're not thinking about how to get around the spreadsheet. You're thinking about what do you really want those formulas to say. And I didn't time myself because I'll be embarrassed how much more quickly you can do it. This was Control D to copy down. The next tab, very similar. We're going to do a Control R to copy to the right. I wasn't quite as creative on my explosion there, but you get the idea. So practice these. This one looks very similar to the last one, but the learning objective here is to teach you that if we select a range of cells and we want to put a formula in it, then we can populate that formula across the entire range without copying. And the only way I could think of to get you to type something in that cell was to tell you, make you think about something. Otherwise, you just copy and paste it there. So if you need to think that the control code to arm this missile, this is why I'm having a hard time keeping a straight face, but the control code to arm this missile to get across is 2 + 2 = 4. So if I'll type a 4 in here and do a Control, not R to copy it, but Control Enter to enter it into all those cells, then it works correctly. In here, the control code is 2 + 3 is 5. Control Enter. And all those are the same, so I want a 6 in each of them. I can do all 4 rows at the same time. Type a 6 in that upper left cell and Control Enter, and so on. Just remember Control Enter. Moving on, this, I was probably getting a little tired when I wrote this one, but the point was to get you to practice getting around on the spreadsheet with your keys, and then Alt equals, it might be Control-Shift-T on a Mac, gets us that sum. And so the idea here is you're scouting around, trying to find the green cell, and then calculate how many enemy troops or something. I'd really probably press the analogy a little bit too far on this one. But get around and put the sum in each of the green cells. And what you're learning here intuitively is that Excel's pretty decent about looking above or to the left or wherever the adjacent cells are to do the sum, Autosum formula. But look at this. If we select all the green ones and do an Alt equal, it doesn't even ask us to check. It just does them all at the same time. Let's move on. In this sheet, we are learning how to delete entire rows. Well, first, I guess, select entire rows or entire columns, and then delete the entire rows or just the selected cells using Control-. So number 1 says find each R. We need to do these in order. So if I'll find some R's, Shift space to select that entire row, Control- to delete that entire row. Then I can move around, find the next one, delete it, find the next one. And if I get one row, I want to shift up arrow, I can get this other one at the same time over here. Control-. And after I've deleted all the rows, now it's time to go back and delete the necessary columns. So I can pick any column, Control space. And the third one says find each L, because we're going to delete the cells and shift left. So if I'll find the L's and select all of them, remember how we did that? Control Shift down, Control Shift right, Control minus. And then since they're L's, we're going to shift to the left. And we'll come over here, do some more L's. Oops, I let it do up. Control minus needs to go left. And now number 4, step 4, says do the other cells up. And notice sometimes it defaults to up or left. I think it has to do with the aspect ratio. In this case, I selected more rows than columns, so it just assumed I wanted to go to the left. I didn't really, I wanted to go up. Same thing here, need to tell it up. But over here where I select more columns than rows, Control minus, then it already assumes I want to go up. I always get nervous on this one because I'm afraid when I get finished it won't look right. But it looks like we got that one right. So let's move on to the final one, and this is bridge. And the idea here is that we want to shift cells down. So if in the last tab we were deleting rows and columns, here we are going to insert. And I think in here we're always going to insert, Control Shift plus, and push things down. Control Shift plus, push things down. If I know how far down I want it to go, I can do a Control Shift plus and just push them down all the way at once. If I do it one time, and I like that, I can Control Y to repeat. And in fact, I'll give you a little shortcut. I can Control Y from now on, as long as this is all I do. Pun intended on the shortcut, by the way. So I'm just hitting Control Y. And I'm repeating the very last thing I did, which was to insert and push cells down. So play around with these. I hope that they help you build a little bit of muscle memory. These make pretty good quiz questions because I can give you this sheet and say, hey, just make it, insert all the cells, push them down. It makes it really easy for me to grade. And if you're thinking it makes it really easy for you to cheat, let me undo all this stuff. And so if you're thinking, well, I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to copy this row all the way across, and then I'll have the blue bar. Well, don't do it that way because hundreds of rows down, I have a bunch of random numbers that when you push these things down, it's pushing those random numbers around. So don't take that shortcut. Don't fall into that trap. But do practice this and get some experience inserting cells, deleting cells, auto-summing, Control entering to copy things or to enter a bunch of cells at once. Control R to copy to the right. Control D to copy down. And then just your basic where we started, Control and Control Shift arrows to move around the spreadsheet. I hope you found this helpful. No quarters required.